Hi, awesome photographers out there. Thank you for joining this live session of Lightroom tutorials with a very cool photo that we have from Coney Island, New York City. I'm Giselle Behrens and this is Photo TV NYC. Join us every day at 12 p.m. and at 3 p.m. for these awesome tutorials that you can follow along by downloading our photo. Down below in the description is the link. Just click on it and it's going to give you the original raw format photo we're working on so you can have as much control and flexibility as you want as a photographer. Remember to subscribe to the channel. Hit that subscribe button, turn on that bell, ring-a-ling. You want the alerts to pop in so you never miss a tutorial on live Lightroom here with Photo TV NYC. And also like the video just right away so you don't forget all the way at the end. Okay guys, so let's start. This is my workspace. I'm just going to reset this image so everybody can see the original photo. So if you did download the photo, you're going to have in Lightroom this exact photo, which was taken in Coney Island, New York City on 2016. Now, when I was there and I took the photo, this place was filled with energy. It was filled with vibrance, so happy people, spring was starting, everybody wanted to go out. So I thought that it was a really good photo just to clear our minds and focus on some fun stuff like photography is. So we're going to start up in our develop module. This tutorial is for photographers that are familiar or have basic knowledge on Lightroom. If you don't have basic knowledge on Lightroom, it's totally fine. You can still follow along, pause the video if you need to, and we will have a new tutorial starting from scratch on how to use Lightroom. What is Lightroom? What is all of the buzz? And why does it make us happier and more organized as photographers so we can save time while making the most amazing photos that a photographer can make. So we're going to start over here in our basic tab. I'm just going to close it up so you guys can see. Develop module, basic tab. And just open up this tab. We're going to work our way from the top to the bottom. And right now, the first element that comes up is the white balance. So in the white balance, I'm pretty happy with the automatic white balance that the camera had. I'm taking a look at the sky, I'm taking a look at the structure, and I'm pretty happy with where the colors are right now. If we do need to go back and adjust the white balance, it's totally fine. That's the magic of Lightroom. It is a non-destructive process to the actual file, so you can go back and edit it anytime during the day, anytime if it's 2 weeks in advance or years away. I've been editing photos, for example, like this one that was from 2016, and as one grows as a photographer, our vision also may shift and evolve. So that's the beauty about Lightroom. It just really gives you a lot of control and flexibility over the photos that you have taken. So now that I know that I'm happy with my white balance, we're going to start with our exposure. And we're going to start by just playing around with this slider, going all the way to the right, going all the way to the left. I invite you guys to explore the photos, see what's going on, see what happens if you do push that slider all the way to one of the two ends. That's the fun of it. Don't be afraid. It's really not going to damage any part of the photo. If you double click on the word exposure, it's just going to reset back your slider to 0. So now in a more subtle way, I'm going to add some exposure, and while I see that the colors really do start becoming alive on the structure, I'm losing a lot of information on this amazing sky which we had. If we want to just take a look at the before and after, and I recommend you guys to always be checking where you started because it's easy to get lost in so many adjustments. You can always hit your backslash key, and that's your hotkey, the one that just popped up on your screen, and that's going to show you the before. So right now, let's just go back to the before and take a look. I want to bring your attention to the sky. Look how beautiful the sky is. We were really fortunate to have such amazing clouds that day. And I want to keep this particular texture of the clouds And I love how the blues are dark. Now, if I do lighten up my structure, the sky, which is dark, is going to also augment in exposure. So, right now, we're doing our general adjustments because we want the image to be as best as it can be to start in the second part of the tutorial, which are the selective adjustments. So I'm going to go back over here, and I know that the information of the clouds is there. So I'm just going to leave it like this for now, and going to jump down to contrast. So in my contrast, I'm going to push it to the right, and then you can start seeing how the blacks, for example, here, 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 and just some shadows over here in the structure, are really starting to become rich and deep blacks. This deep black is going to go all the way to the background, so then all of the poppy colors, like the warm colors, orange and yellow, are going to start coming up to the foreground, and that's what's going to make your photo pop. And that's exactly what we're looking for. We want to make our photo pop. So going down, because I'm happy with my contrast where it is right now, remember, you can always go back. We're going to go to our highlights, and in our highlights, we're going to see what happens when we slide our highlights to the left, which is to make them darker. Now, as I mentioned, because we did overexpose the photo, so we can be exposing for the structure, the background, which was dark, became too light, eliminating the amazing and beautiful texture that the clouds had. So I'm going to say, hey Lightroom, bring down my highlights. And now we can start bringing back all of this information and texture on the clouds, which is so beautiful to take a look at. And I'm all the way on the left, so just never be afraid of going all the way with any of the sliders, as long as you're happy with how it looks as a photographer. So I'm going to continue going down. I'm going to play around with my shadows. What happens if I go to the right? Sorry, to the left. They just go really, really dark. I'm going to zero it down by double-clicking on the word shadows, and then just going up. I can see that the colors start coming out. So for now, I'm just going to leave the shadows as is. I'm not going to go darker with them. Now, whites and blacks, I'm going to leave them as well like that because I'm already happy with my contrast. Those are two manual ways that you can add or diminish contrast. I'm going to jump to my presence, and presence is actually our first tip of the day. So on your computer on the screen, it popped up. Dehaze, clarity, and texture are the first tip of the day because these are going to give us some additional contrast to make the textures pop out and to make the structure really become alive. So I'm going to start from the bottom to the top because dehaze is going to give us the most adjustments out of all of the three sliders over here. And texture is going to be the most subtle of the adjustments. So with dehaze, I usually want to be zoomed out, just fit in screen as we are, and I'm going to add by sliding the dehaze to the right. This is going to give us a little cocktail of all the good things that Lightroom has. It's going to give us rich blacks, it's going to give us some contrast on the midtones, as well as some saturation in the colors. So, as I mentioned, it's very sensitive, so if you go all the way to the right, just to check out what happens, the photo really starts becoming wacky, and we're looking for a realistic image just to give that experience to our viewers of actually being there or sharing with them the amazing energies that were there when we took the photo. So by double clicking on the word dehaze, I'm going to go back and reset it and just slowly augment it. I love how the skies are becoming darker over here and over here. And the structure itself, it's becoming sharper because of the contrast between the highlights and the midtones and the shadows. Now I'm going to work my way up to clarity, and in clarity we're going to have a contrast specifically of the midtones. So the midtones are going to become more contrasted in between them, and that's going to give us some saturation. Now if you do want to see what happens, just slide that slider all the way to the right. You can see even that when we do exaggerate the clarity, again, it becomes starting wacky, but not only that, you start losing color. So I'm going to, by double clicking on the word, reset that back to 0. You can see how alive the image becomes right now. I'm going to go 1 to 1. You can make sure that you're in zoom 1 to 1 on the top left corner, and right now I am in 4 to 1. So I'm going to click 1 to 1, and that gives me my view at 100% of the photo. So clarity, you usually want to do it at 1 to 1 and then check it back by pressing your hotkey Z. Z is going to zoom you in and zoom you out. I'm going to be sharing a lot of hotkeys because I like to go quick in my edits. This photo can usually be edited in around 2 to 3 minutes, but we are taking step by step the process. So you can see what the thought process is when you're editing a photo like this, with the objective of making the structure or the main focal point pop out. So I'm happy with my clarity, and now I'm going to play around with the texture. You do want to be at 100% zoomed in, so Z again, with the texture, because the texture is going to give you sharpness on your tiny details that you have. So probably all these little bulbs in this flash over here, in this ray, are going to start to become more visible, and even so more on this circle, in this star over here. So let's just push the texture. You can see how they really become alive over here, over here. Every line of the photo starts becoming cleaner and crisper. Again, for this photo, we want a very clean, crisp, and sharp look. So if I resetted that just by double clicking on the word texture, you can see the before and the after. Now I'm happy with this. So I still feel that my structure is a little bit too dark, so I'm going to go back to my exposure and just augment the exposure, as we did do some adjustments on the dehaze and on the clarity. The structure went a little bit darker, so we can just quickly adjust the exposure one more time. And now I'm happy with the exposure of the structure. Below the dehaze, clarity, and texture, we have the vibrance and saturation. So saturation is going to give you a saturation in either you can augment it or reduce it, but it's going to give it to you in 100% of the pixels of the image. While vibrance is going to add vibrance to a photo, and Lightroom is what they mean is that they're going to give more saturation to the colors that are already saturated. So I'm just going to augment my saturation just slightly, because we do want it to make it pop out, just as we said before. And I am going to add just a little bit of vibrance because I'm going for that dramatic look. And I think I'm happy right there. So if we do go to our backslash, that backslash hotkey just popped up on your screen, and let's take a look at the before and the after, you can really start seeing and appreciating the difference in between the colors, in between the sharpness, and just how the structure is starting to come out of the photo, giving that 3D effect for the viewer. So I'm going to close up our basic adjustments, and I'm going to remind you that we're still in our general adjustments of the photo. Now we're going to come down to detail over here. So the detail tab is going to help us reduce the noise. When I went at 100% and starting adjusting the dehaze, clarity, and texture, I noticed that I do have some noise over here. So by pressing the hotkey I, you can always take a look at the information, this exact information come up. So on the first tap to the I, this is the information that you're going to have. It's going to give you the date, the time, and how big this file is. And if you press it again, it's going to give you the information of how this photo was taken, what was the angle, what was the ISO, the f-stop, and the speed. So right now you can see that the ISO was taken at 400, and this is why you can start seeing just a little bit of noise around here. Now this noise can be corrected because I do want to reduce the noise on it, and you can go to your details tab where it says noise reduction and just start sliding this slide to the right. Usually between 20 and 30 is fine, and around there I think that it's okay. You can go a little bit less if you do like the grainy look, or you can go above that and it's going to give you a smoother, pastier look. Okay, so we're going to leave it like this, zoom out. Now I do want to note that if you are zoomed out, you won't be able to see the difference of the adjustment of the noise reduction. That's why you want to make sure that you're at 1:1. You can even be at 2:1 if you'd like. But 1:1 is enough just to make sure that your noise reduction is where you want it to be. Now I'm going to close up the detail tab over here on the right hand side, and I'm going to open up the lens corrections. So under the lens corrections, you're going to have two very, very important points. These are enable profile correction and remove chromatic aberration. So we're going to start with the first one. You want to be zoomed out, fit in your window with the photo so you can see the difference of what enable profile correction does. Basically, what it means is that Lightroom has a database of thousands of cameras and lenses and combinations, and they know what is the distortion amount of the combination between that lens and the photo and the camera, and it's going to eliminate it to make a cleaner look on your photo. That's what you're looking for. So if you please just take your attention to the four corners, and in fact in this corner you can even see some dark vignetting over here, because if I go back to my information, I double tap it and I see that it was taken at 24 millimeters, which means that it was a pretty wide angle. So if you use a wide angle, you're going to have more distortion on your photo, like in a fisheye, right? If you use 180 degrees and you're using like a 14 millimeter or a 16 millimeter fisheye, your distortion is going to be incredible. So this check mark is going to help you eliminate the distortion. Now I'm going to close this info by tapping on the eye, and don't blink, take a look, especially at this area over here. And you can see how, like magic, Lightroom made our life easier, and it's much more cleaner than what it was when we did not have this turned on. I'm going to toggle it on and off again. Just bring your attention to the corner so you guys can see the darkness that is going to appear when I turn it off. And when I turn it back on, it completely disappears, and it makes the image look straighter as well. So now that we have this one checked out, you're usually going to want to do it for all of your photos. There might be exceptions that you don't want to do it, and that's totally fine. It's up to you. Now, remove chromatic aberration is this margin of error when you have a photo and you can see that there's a green and a magenta or red halo around your photo. It usually happens when you have your foreground element backlit. So there's a lot of light on the background and your foreground element is dark. So that means that there's an error on the sensor, that the red, the green, and the blue pixels did not align 100%. So the right pixels, on this case for the sensor, went a little bit more to the right, and the green one's a little bit more to the left. If you do print this image at 4 inches by 6 inches, that's not going to matter, and it's going to be very, very small in order for anybody to see the chromatic aberration. But if you're printing it larger, at say 2 feet by 3 feet, then you're going to start seeing these weird colors come out. So by magic, if you go here and just check out that little box, by art of magic, are you ready? Don't blink. Take a look at that light. It's going to disappear. I'm going to toggle it on and off so you can see how dramatic the difference is. Right now it's off. Right now it's on. Now, if I'm being extremely picky, which by the way I am, I'm going to zoom in even more, and I can see that there is still some red around this. So I'm going to go, you can shift from your profile, which is automatic. Lightroom has some automatic settings just to make your life easier and quicker, but you can also go to manual, and as photographers, it's always good. It's good news to have 100% control over each and every element that you see on your photo, now that you are responsible for 100% of the pixels in it. So I'm going to just click here on manual, and if you go to the defringe option, you can see that you have all of these options and sliders. What these are, they're going to help us adjust this small chromatic aberration that is still visible that wasn't able to be removed with the automatic Lightroom process. And that's why they give us the manual option as well. So I'm going to start with the magenta one, defringe, and it says right here, it says amount. So I'm just going to start and slide that slider to the right and see what happens. You can automatically see how quickly, just by adding 3 points, it completely disappeared. So if you are a picky photographer, it's like me, because I know that I'm responsible for 100% of the pixels in a photo. You want to go have full control, go to manual, and you can defringe this at 3. If you downloaded this photo, you'll be able to play around a lot with the chromatic aberration, now that it is very significant. So I am going to zoom out again, pressing our hotkey Z as in zoom, and just take a look at the photo, see where we're at. This is the first part of the tutorial. We have finished with our general adjustments. Now going to our selective adjustments, I do want to continue popping out the color of the orange and the yellows, and afterwards of the blue. And I do want to make this blue darker, so then it's a more dramatic sky, as well as just bring more detail to these poor clouds that we have drained all of the fun out of them by overexposing them. Poor little clouds. So we're going to go to our HSL tab, which means hue, saturation, and luminance, and that is actually our second tip of the day, color luminance. So we're going to go open it up and make sure that you're in your luminance tab, because you do have the hue, the saturation, and the luminance. And we're going to turn on our little drag tool, and this drag tool is going to help us drag the colors darker if you're pushing it lower. Whoa, that was cool. Or lighter if you're pushing it to the top. So let's say that I have a fine art exhibition and I want these clean photos, and in my fine art exhibition all the concepts are white photos with this one element in front. This would be the perfect way to achieve this. And if you look at our before, you can see how we eliminated the sky only by overexposing it and then augmenting the luminance on the blues. Now, that is not my intention right now, so I'm going to double click on luminance. It's going to reset my values back to 0, and I'm going to grab the little tool that we can drag around and just select this blue that I want to make slightly darker because we're doing subtle adjustments, and just leave it around here because I don't want it to look too manipulated, and right now it's actually starting to become a little bit too manipulated. So if I see the adjustments, I'm happy where the tone is. So the tone is going to give you how much light is in a color. But I'm not happy with the saturation of the blue. For me, the blue looks too unrealistic. It looks too blue, too saturated. So I'm going to go to my saturation tab, and I'm going to grab again my little tool, grab the blues, and just bring it down a little bit, just to get that more realistic blue of the sky. Now, what we did on these 2 steps is we made our blues darker, and we reduced a little bit that saturation that came out because we made them darker. So now I'm happy with the blues and with the sky. We're going to go now to saturation, which we are right now, and grab the orange one, and we're going to do a manual adjustment of the orange and just slide this saturation higher up, pump it up, just to give us a little bit more pop to the image, although it really does have a lot already, and the same to the yellow, so I'm just going to do it ever so slightly. And I think that right there I'm happy. Now, after I did these adjustments, I think that it has too much clarity and too much dehaze, and you can start seeing it. I'm going to go to 1 in my zoom, because the darks became a little bit too dark with these adjustments. So I'm going to zoom out, and I'm going to my dehaze, I'm going to lower it. I'm going to lower it to around 28. And I'm doing the adjustments until I'm happy with my structure. And right now, I'm happy with my structures. I lost a little bit of darkness over here on the sky. So what we're going to do right now is go to our masks, and you can press the hotkey M to go to our masks. It's right there on your screen. And with the mask, which is a linear mask right now, we're going to double click on the word effects to reset down all of our sliders, push the exposure down to 0, and give it a little bit of dehaze and see how that's going to start looking. So if you take a look at the adjustments, I like where we're at. I'm going to add some more over here just to balance out the right hand side of the photo. And I'm just dragging this mask for it to feather very smoothly, and I dragged it from the corner to the inside, the same way from this corner to the inside. And you can start seeing how the photo starts becoming more alive. In this area, we absolutely lost all of the detail, and I want to check with the original photo to see how much detail we actually had, or if the photo was already exposed and there's no information there. So you can toggle your backslash button, and I see that I do have some information on the clouds, so I want to recover the highlights. And we can do a quick mask. We're just going to press on New, double click on Effect, and bring down our highlights. And with this mask, we're going to drag in our new mask, a new linear mask, from the bottom left corner to the center, make it nice and fluffy, nice and feathery, and we're going to drag our highlights all the way to the bottom and see how that affects the image. I see that it still doesn't affect it that much. I'm going to reset it. I mean, it does very, very slight adjustment. So I'm going to go with my exposure and just lower it with my exposure, and that made a difference. Now you can see that the tone, which is the light, is the same tone as these clouds. And that is going to maintain the eye of the viewer within our main focal point of the photo, which is this metal structure that we're trying to make pop out. Because if there is a light leak over here, that means that the eye of our spectator is going to go directly where there's most light in the image. So when they're taking a look at the photo and they see this, their eye would bounce over here and back here, and it might just escape the photo and they're going to click on next. So what you want is to retain the eyes of your viewer as long as possible on your photo. You're going to do that by keeping as much brightness and as much sharpness and color contrast on this area, which is your main focal point. And on the outside, we're going to make it a little bit darker. So to make it a little bit darker, we're going to go to our third tip of the tutorial, which is the vignette. I'm going to press again my M just to leave and close up the masks. I'm going to close basic, and I'm going to go to the Effect tab. On the Effect tab, we're going to have post-crop vignetting, which means that even if you crop it, the vignetting is going to stay within the border of the image. So it's a smart vignette. So I'm going to slide it to the left to make it darker, And now, just by sliding it to minus 25, negative 25, you're going to start seeing how the structure completely pops out of the photo, which is what we were trying to do in this tutorial. I'm going to reset it by double-clicking on the word amount, just so you guys can see the difference. It really starts popping out. I think around there, I'm happy. So when I'm done with this image, I want to check the before. This is where we were before, and this is where we were after. There's one more thing before I finish that I want to bring your attention to, and it was some dust sensor. That's when we were adjusting the noise, I noticed. Dust sensor are big blotches of dark spots on your image, like this one that I just did a little like balloon on. That you do not want in your photos. Dust sensor means that your camera was dirty. The sensor of your camera had specks, and it happens all the time. Because it does have some static to it, the static makes the dust stick to your sensor, so you always have to make sure to have a good maintenance to your camera so this doesn't happen. But it happens all the time. So Lightroom made it easy for us, and if you press your hotkey Q, that's a pretty cool Q, right? You are going to go into the spot healing of Lightroom, or you can manually just select this little circle, this little icon over here. Select the size that you want. I think around there I'm good. And just click on it, and it's going to heal and make that little blotch disappear. So you want, again, the whole point of this tutorial is to have a very clean, professional looking photo. So you want to make sure that you don't have any dust sensors on the photo. I'm just going to check all around by dragging it. You can press the space bar and this little hand is going to appear, and you can just drag around to make sure that there's no other dust sensor like this one over here again. So I'm going to heal that one up. You also want to make sure that you're in heal. Heal is a smart clone, so it's better that when you are doing spot corrections, just be on heal. And if you do see any additional ones, if when you downloaded this photo, just go ahead and heal it. I don't see any more. You want to be at 100% when you do start your healing process. There's one more over here. Because it's not noticeable when you are zoomed out, but if you print it large, you're going to have splots that can be up to 2 inches big, and that's not fun when you have a large format print with these huge dust sensor spots. So let's take a look again at our before and at our after. And you can see how both photos look to be completely different photos. Here is the slideshow. So if you are looking to make your photos pop, this tutorial was a perfect example of a photo that started bland and dull, and now it really pops out and makes us look really, really good as photographers. Everybody, thank you for joining. Remember to subscribe so you never miss a live tutorial. And these are follow along, which means that you can download our photo and just follow along the tutorial. If you do have a photo that you'd like me to edit on one of our live tutorials, just send it to this below email, which is myphototvnyc@gmail.com. And you will have a chance for me to select it. We have 2 photographers upcoming that are going to be present with their photos next week. So I encourage you guys to subscribe, ring that bell, make sure that you have the alerts turned on so you don't miss it, and have a great creative day. Bye everybody, thanks for joining.